Okay, the reason that we're here today is actually to talk about the investigation, which is your 30% very important external piece. And what I'm hoping to do with this session is to kind of cover all the bases of what's needed, and then you can go away and have a think about what it is that you want to do for that topic. The booklet will give you a lot of this information as well. At this stage, you should have been working through the personal reflection, you should have started the journal. Some of you may be on a workplace reflection and some of you may be working on the industrial relations. But you need to ask yourself, how many of these tasks have you achieved so far? Because while you're going to work on the investigation from now on, I'm hoping, you will have to have one of these in the background that you're working on as well, because you have to manage the whole 7 over the year. Okay, so we'll come back and talk about those if needed in a minute. So with this investigation, you've got 2 choices. You either do an issue or you do a practical. Basically, the difference between the 2 is quite minimal because they're both assessed exactly the same. The practical is based around you actually producing something. If you were a worker and you were doing workplace practices and you were a builder, then your practical might be, can I build a dry stone wall? You would do all the research into how to make one, you talk to people, take photos, just like a mini research project. You'd make the wall and then you'd evaluate how well you think you did. In your case, you're not builders in this case, but you may, in some senses, want to do some other kind of product, task or service. It could be coaching some kids, it could be running an event like a competition, it could be an experiment on yourself, that you want to get your fitness up, you want to try high altitude training, you want to see if you can build bulk. Any of those could be something that you actually produce. If that's the case, you would deliver the activity and do it, and then you go back and evaluate. Or you might decide that you want to look at an issue. An issues investigation is like any other subject, PE, health, nutrition, psych, they all have issues investigations. You basically start with a question that is an issue, and we'll discuss what that is in a minute. Either a practical or an issue will be written up with photos, sketches, diagrams, graphs. It's a report. It's not written as an English essay in any shape or form. On that, talking about being written, if it is written, it's about 2,000 words, and we can have a little bit over, and that's my job to help you to get those words just to 2,000. That's a limit, it's not a minimum, so if you only did 1,800, that's totally acceptable, or 12 minutes. I have had students make videos, I've had students do multimodal where they've combined words and something else, so there are many different ways of submitting the task at the end of the day. Okay. What does it get assessed against? Because really, that's what you have to fulfil to get a good grade. This is the A band, by the way. I'm not showing you the F or the E or anything else. Knowledge and understanding you should be really familiar with. Lots of your tasks have already looked at knowledge and understanding. Investigation and analysis is not assessed quite as much across the course, but definitely is here, as you can see by the name, investigation. And lastly, reflection and evaluation is really essential to do. So we're looking for you to show your knowledge and skills, to look at issues within, even if it's a practical, you'll be discussing what happens in your industry to some degree. You'll definitely be researching, analysing, and the investigation will need to be well informed. Good sites, interview surveys, and lastly, there must be some critical self-evaluation. I don't know how many of you have already done a research project or you're thinking of doing it soon. It is like a mini research project. Don't get freaked out. It's not worth the same amount as a research project, so there's not as much work involved. Okay, so if you decide to go down the track of the issues investigation, basically it needs to be something that is locally, nationally or internationally of importance right now. You will investigate it and you'll use that information to write up a report. The significance of the issue is that it has to be something people are talking about. So if you were to choose, is 2020 cricket due to be the death of cricket? That's not an issue anymore. It was 5 years ago because all my cricket students thought, oh, 2020 cricket, what is this? You know, it's not right. It's just not a good thing. And of course now it's proven to be quite successful. So that's no longer an issue. It must be something that's current. You'll collate the information, present it, put together some form of report or something similar, and conclude with your own opinion. So there is room for I in this issues investigation. So what is an issue? And I think it's kind of a word that sometimes gets misused. It's got to be something that people are thinking and talking about. If no one is really talking about this, then maybe it isn't an issue. It's got to be debated from different perspectives. it has to have some controversy. So it's not a question like, should athletes use water to hydrate? That's a stupid issue. It's not really an issue, is it? Because of course they should. It's a pretty common yes answer. So we want to find something that some people would say yes and some people would say no. A good example would be, does high altitude training assist performance in such and such athletes? Well, some people would say high altitude training works. Others would say no, it doesn't. It's a waste of time. So that has some controversy. By the way, notice that here in brackets, these are not my definitions of issue. This has come from 3 different places, and that's referencing, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to make sure that you are putting in where these have come from. Where's the information come from within your report? So a topic is not an issue. Be careful with that. And just to give you an example of what I mean, you might be interested in nutrition and performance. I know a lot of athletes and dancers are, but you've got to make it into an issue. So to do that, and that's the teacher's role, we try to find a question that will fit this project. So can nutrition, in this case, it's a beach volleyballer, can nutrition influence recovery in performing beach volleyball players? So it's not just any athlete, they've really focused in. Should Aussie footballers load up on protein and protein substitutes to achieve muscle bulk? Not just should they have protein substitutes, but will it help them achieve this? That could also be turned into a practical, by the way, because you might actually decide you want to experiment yourself and see if protein substitutes help. You can also use a hypothesis. These are questions, but these are hypotheses. You can do that. I find them a little bit more complex. You're making a statement and then you're either proving it wrong or right. But by all means, if you want to do that, you can. Any questions regarding issues and how to make an issue question, or what really constitutes an issue? You're on my train of thought, you get what I mean. It's got to have some controversy. All right. What about this practical? This was introduced about 5 years ago, so it's quite a new thing in this subject, and there are some fantastic examples that I'm going to show you in a minute. The thing about this is that you still do the research. Then you make or perform the thing, and then you will evaluate it. Just to give you an idea of what that might look like, these are just some past examples. Coaching appears quite a lot. Developing a website. These dietary plans and how to avoid injury, generally they are experimental, so the students have trialled something and then agreed at the end whether it worked or not. Methods of recovery would have been experimental. Running a carnival, comparing something by actually running an experiment. Today I'll also show you some good examples of past students so you can see what they look like. But they're just some practical examples. Okay. Whether you do an issue or a practical, referencing is absolutely vital. We don't mind if you want to use the footnoting system or in-text Harvard. It doesn't bother us as long as you're consistent. So if you're going to use footnoting, you do that right the way through. Then at the end, you still have your bibliography of everything that you've used to get towards this end point. Now, if you don't know the difference or you need help on how to reference, there's lots of stuff on Moodle. In fact, there is one page that we've put together that actually gives you some examples in Word, and I'm hoping it's going to open and I'll see it. No, you're not going to see it. My apologies. But it is sitting on Moodle, and you can have a look at that. So that I'm just going to end this show so I can show it to you. Sorry, guys. On Word. Where is it? Come on. No. Not going to bring it up. While I'm here, actually, I will show you a couple of really good examples just while I've got this on the screen. This is an example of a practical and what it will look like when it's done. This was a young female surfer, and she actually asked a question was, can I land or can I perform a forehand air reverse? I don't know exactly what that looks like, but she obviously does. She's put a contents page in. You don't have to have that, but it could be handy. And then from there on in, she has used a subheading, starting, of course, with an introduction, as all students should, and then she divides that up into other subheadings, and she, by the way, is using in-text referencing, so there's no footnoting here. So if you wonder why there's nothing down the bottom of every page, that's because she's using author, year, and she's doing in-text referencing. Okay, she continues on in this practical to design a program that she's going to use. So this was a gym program. I'm sorry it's not very clear. Then she goes on to talk a bit more research into strength and mobility, stability and balance. And finally, once she conducted this program, she also talked about competitive edge, the mental side of being able to do it. She evaluated her training program and she self-analysed how she went. She actually admits in here that she did the training program, she became a better surfer, but she never actually got to land that particular movement. She's still working on that. Doesn't mean she fails, because she still very effectively evaluates how she went. And then she ends with her reference list or bibliography here of all the things that she used to put together this practical. Of course, a conclusion generally goes in there as well. While I'm here, you'll notice this appendix is something that some subjects will allow. We do, but there's not much point in having too much in there. We don't want a copy of the interview you did. We trust you if you did an interview, you'll tell us what they said. If you do a survey, we don't need copies of the surveys in the appendix, so you don't need to include them if you were wondering about that question. Okay, so let's get back to our PowerPoint, which is hopefully sitting on the desktop. Here it is. All right, so moving on, hopefully from here. Alrighty, so all of this information on footnoting and on in-text referencing is sitting on Moodle, so if you're not sure how to do that, please refer to it. Okay, a couple of things that you need to know, just general stuff about this external investigation. Firstly, it's double marked. That means I will mark it first, and then I will pack it up. No names are on it, no school name, no individual's names, only your SACE number, which you can get from me or from here from school. That goes in the top right corner. I mark it, I send it to the SACE board, they mark it. It's out of 30. If I was to give yours 25 out of 30 and they gave it 27 out of 30, they put those two grades together, which comes to 52, and they halve it. And they say that's what you got for that piece of work. And I don't know that grade, nor do you, until Christmas time when the results come out. If my grade was 25 and the SACE board gave it 12, massively less, or not even that, even 19, there's too big a gap there. They don't just put them together and halve it. They get a third person to mark it. So it's very religiously and very carefully looked at. So we need to make sure this is a good piece of work. I can't tell you your grade, and I won't know your grade until the end. I can tell you for all the other 70% of your work, but not this 30%. It should be a maximum of 2,000 roughly, or 12 minutes. You can see other people's work when we run holiday sessions at the end of term 3. We will have some there, or the end of term 2, sorry, when you can actually look at other people's work. And that's quite handy if you're doing a similar topic. Make sure you reference everything. Do include a bibliography, of course. The more drafts you do, the better it will be. That goes without saying for any task, but particularly this one. This really needs to be refined, and it needs to be a polished piece of work. If you were to hand me a piece of work and say, here Mandy, I've done my issues investigation and I have not seen it before that, I've never seen any drafts, you will not get a grade. We cannot assure the SACE board it's your work unless we've seen it. So you must pass in drafts. That means don't wait till you've written 2,000 words and then give it to me. Please write 200 and send it in. Am I on the right track? Are these good subheadings? You know, am I heading in the right direction? Otherwise, you've wasted your time. It's due, guys, and this is an extremely important date to remember, in term 3, week 7, which is Friday, September 9th. So you've got what seems a long way away to do it, but believe me, time will fly, especially as it takes time, firstly, to get the right question, then to do the research, then to start putting it together and drafting it, and then finalising it. So you've got to make sure you get onto it pretty quick. Lastly, please remember that it is a report, not an English essay or a history style essay, and all of these things can be included. If you're doing a practical, photographs are pretty much compulsory. We need to see that you actually did it. Yes, you can have your face in it. Doesn't matter that it's meant to be de-identified. It's fine to have that in. If you were doing, say, as some of them I'm going to show you, some form of experiment like that last surfer, yes, you could include sketches, tables, all of that stuff is totally valid. Moodle will have more material on it, so you can refer to that. Now, any questions that come to mind about what it is that you think, you know, what am I going to do? I'm a bit... Any of you doing PE issues at the moment? No? None of you studying PE? Oh, okay. Well, that's easy. So, because a lot of people will actually say to me, can I do the same question as my PE? There's also been the question asked here at St. Peter's, can I use the same question for my research project as this? And that's a very debatable question. I would say yes, if you altered what you produced for me is different to research project. Your school says no. So if you have already started research or you're thinking about it, it's possible that we'll need to do some negotiating. But generally speaking, it might be that you could actually use similar materials that you've looked at. Okay, would you like to see a few more examples up here? Yep. Now we get the in-text referencing. That's not what I want. Okay, so let's have a look at, because those 2 pages are on Moodle and these are not. Okay, let's have a look at this one. This is an issue and a very relevant one for her. The problem is if you pick an issue that's very general, so if Tom was to do an issue about netball, firstly I'd question, you don't play netball, so what's that got to do with you? And secondly, how could he self-evaluate if he's not a netballer? So this girl was a female cricketer, and she said, will they ever achieve equity in the world of cricket, which is basically, of course, male? That's her front cover. Again, no name, just a SACE number, an introduction, and you can see her subheadings in blue. She's also done footnoting, as you can see at the bottom. The use of images can be really effective, and this is a great example. She was looking at the fact that Elise Perry, who's one of our best female cricketers, when you look her up on Google, you get Elise Perry bikini and Elise Perry hot. You don't get Elise Perry great cricketer, which sort of goes to say that what perception is there about her? She's actually a good soccer player too, and yet that's what people perceive about her, is what she looks like. And sadly, that's often the case for female athletes. More subheadings, everything beautifully referenced. She did get an A+, in case you're wondering. Another great indication, I've seen the same for Matildas and Socceroos. The cricket players lost, did really badly in this test. The females won. Look how big their article is compared to what the males got. So she's really showing through images that her point. At the end, she has got conclusion and future recommendations. What she didn't do is make it really clear where she did her self-evaluation. I know it's here, and you probably could too, because you see I and my, she's talking personally, but she did a little bit further on back as well, but it's really important that you get that in, self-evaluation. Her sources, by the way, she used a lot of primary, a lot of interviews with people, famous Australian cricketers, and then she had a series of websites that she used. Okay, I'll give you another example of perhaps another issue. Let's have a look. That's a prac. Let's have a look at maybe this one. Another issue. This is what your work will look like. It's a front cover that SACE board asks for, with your SACE number, and it will say what is your sport. That's really important, because the SACE board wants to know, like I said, if someone's a footballer, why are they doing something on tennis? That just doesn't make sense. So she was looking at, are young elite swimmers being placed under so much pressure? Her question she gave me was that they are in danger of getting sick or, you know, whatever. And I added this, are young athletes under so much pressure that their work, health and safety is at risk? Because that brings in workplace practices. And this is what we're going to try and convince the SACE board markers, whatever you do is valid. Because some of them freak out a bit. They don't understand that this subject is, you know, used for athletes and dancers as well. So again, you can see the same thing, subheadings, they happen to be in blue, but that's not a law, that just happened that way. You can use bullet points, which helps sometimes save words. You can quote people as long as you've got that in italics. Again, she's used footnotes, as you can see. She's had some famous case studies, which she actually says, see Appendix C, because she can't put them in here. It's too many words. That's kind of a way of using appendices as well. She did a survey of other elite swimmers, and she's analysed what she learnt from it. And then she's made it very clear, reflection and self-evaluation. So here she's talked about, she's a national swimmer, and she has said, I have faced, I developed feelings, I talked, so it's all about her. Finally though, she's made a conclusion from her research and she's made some recommendations, you know, what she thinks kids should do so that they don't get sick if they are a top-level swimmer. Then, as I said, she does have all these appendices. This year we're saying don't put all that in. Waste of time, waste of paper. But she's got a fantastic reference list. Lots of websites and also a lot of primary sources, which were either emails or a conversation that she had. This can be really useful. That's worth thinking about. If you happen to know, I had a student one year, a soccer player whose dad was a chiropractor. So he thought, I've got access to chiropractors and maybe some doctors. So he looked at an injury-based report. So that's sometimes worth thinking about. Who do you know? Who could you interview? Could be very handy. Let's have a look at maybe a couple more, and then we'll get that camera turned off. Oh, Mandy, don't do that. Let's close that one. All right, what else have we got here? This is a very academic issues-based. The student obviously did get a very high grade. She does track and field and netball, and this is her question. Similar almost to that last one, but does intense training in the workplace, we put that in, with young athletes affect your growth and maturation, which could lead to burnout? So basically, does overtraining cause negative, responses, and therefore maybe you pull out? She's got an intro, and then she's got all of these subheadings. Effects on growth. She's used graphs. She's managed to get some, her mother actually is a physio, so she managed to get some really important stuff. Overuse injuries. Psychological factors. She's found this graph that is about performance. Very important that she's done a great section on reflection and self-evaluation. She herself, I think, had suffered almost burnout from her sport. And then lastly, concluding and recommending what she thinks. Recommendations are good if you've got an issue, because you can sort of say, this is how I think we should solve the issue. And then she did have appendices, but I hope not too many. I don't need this. This is a copy of an interview she did. We know you did it. We trust you. We don't need to see it. Let's get through all that. And then here we go with her bibliography. She had 2 interviews, that's her mother, and then a whole lot more secondary sources that she used. Alrighty. There is one practical that I was really hoping to show you. I don't think I can find it. No. I think I must have closed it. There's one of a girl that did actually, she looked at a series of diets and she tried them because she wanted to lose weight. I had a soccer guy who wanted to build upper body strength, so he did a practical where he made a training program. He went to the gym. I think he measured himself, obviously, took photos before and then after, and yeah, he did. He really built his upper body strength, which is what he was trying to do.